My name is Jaime Gennaro, and I am a business coach and a consultant. So I want to talk about this idea of authentic leadership and why it's important. And then at the end of the call, what I want to do is pull a couple of you on, if you're open to it, and work through some of the leadership or management issues that you might have right now. It's really helpful in these kind of group calls when people can hear some of the issues other people are having and also understand that it's normal to have some of these issues with leadership or management. And also that whatever I'm doing to kind of help you through that, it might be helpful to someone else. So we're going to do that towards the end of the call. Louise, I'm so happy you're here. This is great. And we'll have to catch up at some other point. So great. So yes, so I went into managing without tools and without techniques, and I was scared. And I think a lot of that hesitation, because I was so young and inexperienced, was also that I was afraid to be myself. I was afraid to follow my own instincts. And I think what's important about this idea of being authentic is that leadership gets so much easier when you're not trying to be something you're not. And sometimes we see leaders who don't look like us. Maybe physically they don't look like us. Maybe they're not the same gender. Maybe they don't come from the same background. And also maybe they just aren't similar to us, right? So we don't think that there's a place for our unique skills and our unique talents or the way that we come across. We don't know that there's room for us because we don't see it. And we don't value those soft skills that are uniquely ours. So what I want to do today is really help you identify what are those things that are uniquely yours and how can you confidently own those things. And one thing that I think is so important about being authentic as a leader is also that it really affects so many places in your life, right? So we're not just a leader at work, we're a leader at home, and we're a leader with our families, and we're a leader when we have to go negotiate something if we have an issue with our car or we have an issue in our house and we have to negotiate something. We want to come across confidently, but also as ourselves, right? We don't want to be trying to do or be something that we're not. But we definitely want to have the tools to feel confident in our decisions, feel confident in the way we're talking about what our decision is and what our vision is for whatever this thing is that we're negotiating or talking through. I want you to feel like leadership is easy. I think that's the other thing about why I want to do this class, this webinar. I don't want you to go into leadership thinking that it's harder than it needs to be. So I'm going to talk through some tips, but really leaning into this idea of what is unique about you and what are your unique skill sets. So what I'd love to do is open up the chat. And while I kind of go through what I think are the three fundamental key factors to being a strong, authentic leader, I'd love for you to go to the chat and put in 2 skills, soft skills, that you feel like you have that are uniquely yours. And what I mean by soft skills are things like maybe you're empathetic or you're a good listener. So they're not necessarily things we're going to list on a resume, but they are things that become really important when you're trying to guide and inspire a team. So go ahead in the chat and just write 2 things that are soft skills that you have that are uniquely yours. For me, I think the fact that I'm casual, and it sounds funny, but I am a pretty relaxed, pretty casual person. And I think in some ways it makes people feel comfortable because they can drop their guard, right? I'm not coming into the webinar reading a script, right? I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to give you a sense of the way that I talk to people, the way I am going to show up in a group. I'm not going to show up any differently for a team that I'm managing versus a webinar or a presentation, or if I'm speaking on a panel, I'm going to be me. I might drop a couple F-bombs, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident. I'm going to be just relaxed because I don't want people to feel like I'm so formal or so cut and dry, absolutely professional and buttoned up that they don't have room. I want people to feel included and able to join me. So I think that's one of my kind of unique skills that I played down for a long time because I didn't think it had value. And that's where leadership gets easier, when you stop trying to be something you're not and stop trying to swim upstream. One of the things too is that when I really follow my intuition about things, or my instincts, my gut instinct, like, I think this person is about to quit. That's something you might have a gut instinct about. When I follow and trust those gut instincts, I feel like I'm a better leader. I'm trusting myself. And so I'm saying things that maybe nobody said before, but I'm following my instincts about it. And it leads me to make decisions that feel more aligned because I'm trusting myself. And I think this is something, like, as a parent, the mistakes I've made or the regrets I have as a parent, which I think is the most important leadership role you can play. I feel like I have regrets when I go against my own instincts, when I make decisions. Oh, here comes the ice cream truck. When I make decisions that are out of alignment with what my intuition or my instincts are telling me could be the right direction to lead my kid or to lead somebody on my team. So I want to read a couple of these things. So empathetic, calm. Oh, sorry, I know other people are trying to get into the meeting, but I asked people to come 5 minutes before because it's hard for me to let people in once I've already started. So positive, curious about people. I love that, Louise, and that you listen, patient and understanding, empathetic, resilient, being transparent, and a good listener. These are all amazing traits to have as a leader. So lean into these things. Don't ever second guess that these things are really important qualities to have as a leader. So the three things that I mentioned in the webinar sort of advertisement were these three traits that I think are really key to being a strong leader and to staying truly authentic. So these things, in my opinion, are integrity. And I'm going to ask you just to put your video off for now, and then I'll bring you all in potentially later. So just mute and turn your video off if you don't mind. So basically, the three key things that I think are really important are integrity, transparency, and empathy. So these things are really tied to staying true to who you are. And I love that somebody already used transparency. I think it's so important. But it's also something that, oh, do you mind just turning off your video? There we go. So let's talk a little bit about integrity. So integrity is really about what you value. And as a leader, and especially if you're a business owner, you want to know what your values are. So when you think about being a leader, what are the things that are really important to you? So for example, for me, micromanagement is something that I think is not a great value as a leader. And so when I'm standing in my integrity, I want to make sure that whenever I'm showing up as a manager, I'm not showing up as a micromanager. I'm not taking work off people's plates. I'm not doing it for them. I'm not telling them how to do it. I mean, unless I'm training them, but I'm not telling them to do it my way, which is very micromanaging. So when I'm managing from integrity, I am not micromanaging. So if a manager were to tell me to do something that felt micromanaging, like, oh, you need to go in. I had a client say actually that their boss asked them to read people's emails, other like people from outside the team. And it really felt like it went against her values. she couldn't be in integrity and do that task. And so these are things that are related to also boundary setting, because sometimes you're going to have to say no because it doesn't feel aligned with your integrity. So if you know what those values are.
Good morning. You too.
Oh, if you know what your values are, then you can show up as a leader in that more authentic light, in that more authentic way, because you know your values and you're standing in your integrity. So to me, integrity is really key. And it's really important that you know what those things are before you become a leader. And again, like I said, if you're running a business, it's really important to know, like, what's your mission and what are the values of the organization? Because ultimately, if you're leading a big team, you want to get them all aligned behind a purpose, behind a goal. You are like a coach. When I am training leaders and managers, I give them a lot of coaching tools, because ultimately what you are is that person who is training and guiding and getting people to a goal, to a broader goal that maybe they never thought they could reach, right? And so when you can get them aligned to a similar purpose or a similar inspiration point or a similar goal, they're going to want to rally behind you, right? They're going to trust you to lead them to that place because you are standing in your values. You're aligning them to those values also. You're encouraging them to come with their own set of values, right? And this way, it leads into better communication also, because you're not asking people to do things that are out of alignment with their values, right? So I'm not talking about like, oh, I'd rather sit at home and watch TV and that's my value. We're not talking about those kinds of values. We're talking about real integral values that are important to who you are. So know what those are before you go into your leadership role so that you're never going against them, so that you feel aligned and you feel more comfortable and you feel confident talking through the ways you're going to lead, the ways you're going to get people to be productive, the way you're going to motivate people, because it's aligned with your values and you're clear on those. And if you need to have conversations with people who maybe are managing you, again, you can show up in confidence. You can show up leading up, managing up, because you know what those things are. Really, really critical. So again, in the chat, will you tell me what's one thing that is a value for you? What's a value for you as a leader? My value is, not micromanaging. So giving people more autonomy and space and ability to make mistakes. That's a value of mine as a manager. I always stand behind it. What are some values of yours? Whether you're a manager or about to be a manager, what are some things that are really important to you that you uphold as you go into this role? So the next thing is transparency. And I love that somebody already brought this up. Transparency really covers two spaces, in my opinion. So transparency is about giving people a why. So not just giving them a directive, like you have to do this thing, but always backing it up with a why. And it's the same thing as parenting. I like bringing up that metaphor. If you're a parent, if you're not, it's not a great metaphor, but you can think about your own parents in this way. But when they tell you that you have to do something, pick up your clothes, don't throw your clothes on the floor, don't put wet towels on the ground. These are all things I tell my teenager. When you say why, it makes so much more impact than just giving a directive, like do this or don't do that. It's so much more aligned to your values, right? And to a broader purpose when there's a why behind those tasks. And it helps your team see that you have a bigger vision. I'm not just going to give you busy work. I'm leading this to, there's a purpose behind this. Like there's a reason why I'm leading you to this place. So it gives people that sense of security that you've got them too. Like you've got a vision and there's a why behind what they're doing. It's so impactful to a culture, to a company culture. And as a manager, you are responsible for not pushing, but like guiding the company culture with the way that you manage. So if you're giving directives and you're not giving a reason behind those directives and you're making people do busy work and you're micromanaging, you're creating a domino effect essentially of people thinking that's the way to lead. So they're going to lead their teams that way too. So you want to be transparent about the why behind things that they're doing or behind the reason the company is making certain decisions, because you should have some sense of that as a manager, and transparency around how they're doing. So this is a place where a lot of managers fumble because they don't have the tools or know how to give appropriate, direct, kind feedback. And if you are not transparent with people about their abilities and capabilities, and if you're not talking to them very often about how you think they're doing and your reflections on them, then you are essentially delaying discomfort for yourself and for them. And the discomfort will come because there will be a moment where that feedback comes up, and it might be in an annual review, or it might be in some situation that's a little bit unfair for them to find out then, right? So transparency is also about giving clear feedback at the moment when something happens where somebody needs feedback. And many managers avoid it because they're conflict avoidant. They don't want to start trouble. And ultimately, that conflict, again, is just going to come later down the road. And it's very unfair to not be clear and transparent with people about their own performance. This is ultimately like the number one part of your job as a manager. And the way that you can be more authentic is by making sure that you're putting in the work to essentially track their progress, right? Like that's your job as a manager. So if you're overwhelmed with other tasks, you're not going to be able to clearly guide your people. So it's important that you have enough time to give that kind of clear, transparent feedback on a regular basis. And you have to know, right? You don't want to just give BS feedback, right? You want to give very intentional, clear feedback to people. And trust me, it might feel unkind because it might be difficult feedback to give. But when people get feedback, they are able to be better performers, better at their jobs. They can move up in their career more easily because you've provided them the gift of feedback. And really, that is such an important part of your job. But do it in a way that feels true to you. So if a manager is telling you to deliver the feedback in a certain way or giving you like a bullet point list of the things you need to cover, go into that meeting, that feedback meeting, aligned to your integrity and aligned to who you are and the way that you want to deliver that feedback. And don't worry about how people are forcing you or micromanaging you to give feedback in a certain way. Follow your instincts about the way you want to approach that conversation. It will always go well when you're aligned to that integrity because you're being truthful and honest. You're not being mean. You're not being vindictive. You're not out to get anyone. If you're coming from that kind of clean space, then it's more kind to give that feedback. I work with a lot of managers who have a lot of difficulty giving feedback. I am based in the Netherlands, and here it is not a problem because the Dutch are extremely direct and they do not pull their punches. You know exactly where you stand. with anyone at work and with any one of your friends. There is no question because they are very direct with their feedback. But I'm American. So in America, it's very hard to get direct feedback from people because everyone's so concerned about protecting people's feelings when, again, you're not really protecting their feelings because they're going to get hurt. It's just going to happen later when the feedback comes up in a situation that's maybe not the best situation for it to come up. There may be more pain there. So I want to go back to the chat and some of the values that you all listed in terms of like how you want to stand in integrity. We have trust, can-do spirit, collaboration and creativity, allowing mistakes. I love that. Trust and honesty, trustworthy, capitalizing on individual talents. I love this. Amazing. So yes, these are fantastic values to be standing in and to be representing and to be a good example of these things, right? And so many of you listed trust, which I think is really important. And guess what? Trust comes two ways. Your people are going to trust you when they know where they stand, right? When they know what your values are, when they know that you're guiding them somewhere, they're going to trust you more. And you're going to trust them more when you give them feedback and they're open to the feedback. And they're not defensive about it, but they understand that you're trying to help them, right? It's kind of a co-working, co-creating situation. You're helping them level up and they're trusting you to help them level up. So I love that. These are all amazing values that you should 100% embrace and embody and stand behind in your work as leaders. So the third thing that I think is really important when we talk about authentic leadership is this idea of empathy. And I know that this word gets thrown around a lot, and it doesn't mean like giving so much room for feelings that no work is getting done. So let's be honest about that. Empathy is really just giving space. It's holding space for people. So when someone makes a mistake, which I love the idea of allowing mistakes 100%, it's not jumping to conclusions or making assumptions or judging that mistake right away, right? We don't want to just immediately see a mistake and then we all get scared, right? Because we don't know if that mistake is going to reflect poorly on us. So this mistake happens, and sometimes we rush to a solution and we're not giving space. And empathy is really kind of being open and being curious and digging in and asking questions before jumping to conclusions or jumping to a solution. It's really just listening, right? Asking all the questions and listening. So what happens if you're in sort of like the middle management tier and you have a manager who sees the mistake and you're ultimately responsible for that mistake, right? Sometimes people will just jump in really quickly and try to fix it and do the work themselves, AKA micromanage, and they never really dig into what the issue was. So what happens often is that mistake will get repeated because we haven't given time, we haven't been empathetic to what could have been going on in that situation. Because again, we're coaches, right? We want to know the whole person that's on our team. We want to know them. We want to know what's going on because maybe something happened in their personal life. And we need to know that to sort of gauge how we're going to go forward, right? And it's not that you want to get super personal with people. I actually lean in the direction of more professional and less personal, but it doesn't mean that there's not a whole person standing in front of you that has a life outside of the responsibilities they have at work. And sometimes those things cross over. And sometimes you need to just be there to listen and understand the situation so that you can work together to come to a solution. Rather than you jumping in and trying to fix it, the thing that's going to help this person grow and move forward is by just being empathetic, being open, listening to where they're at, and then helping guide them to find a solution or work together on the solution. As a manager, you never want to jump in and just do the work for them. They're never going to learn. They're never going to grow. Mistakes are amazing opportunities for learning. And if we just make that mistake a failure and we don't take all the learnings from it, then they get repeated. And sometimes it will either get people to quit or different things will happen. But if we can put it into context, some mistakes are more severe than others. But if we can put the mistake into context, we can come up with a solution that works for everyone rather than acting out of fear or anxiety to just come to a solution. So, any thoughts or questions about empathy? Is there a time that you've been able to use empathy as a manager or have a manager use empathy towards you? I'd love to hear any stories you have about using empathy. Again, it's a newer model of leadership because back in the day when we pretended like people were robots, we didn't give them space to be humans. There was less empathy in leadership styles. There was less time to listen. And there was more directives. Leadership was really about directing people to do things, measuring their productivity level, and then deciding how you were going to up their productivity. Well, now we know the more empathetic we are, the more we can build purpose behind what they're doing, the more we can rally them towards a common goal, the more productive teams are, right? So now there are studies reflecting that productivity actually comes from managers who are empathetic, who give space, who give autonomy, who are good, strong guides. It's a different style. And so empathy is a really important part of that. And I think if you're a person who is empathetic in your day-to-day life, it's awkward to turn that off when you become a leader. So again, it's like all the things that you use in your personal life that are really effective, bring them in. Don't ignore those things, those soft skills that you all listed. Don't ignore those things. They're a really important part of you being a well-rounded leader that people want to, I don't want to say follow, but that people want to rally behind, that people believe in, that people are like, I see where you're taking us. We want to go there too. Like, we're on board. We're ready to go. We're in it with you. So what I'd like to do now, we have 30 minutes. And what I'd like to do now is actually take you through some coaching. And why is this relevant? Like, yes, I'm a business coach and you're not all becoming business coaches, but I do think that when you have check-ins with your staff, if you check in with them weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, when you have time where you're sitting down with your team, you kind of, in that moment, become a coach. So you are guiding them and helping them reach their goals, right? So you're either helping them reach a goal in the short term, which might be related to a project, or you're helping them reach a goal in the long term, which might be related more to their career trajectory and where they're hoping to go. So when you sit down with them, you want to practice these things like this empathy and this transparency and giving feedback and aligning them to values, helping find out what their values are. So you need some coachy sort of tools and skills. So what I'd love to do is sort of be your manager. I'd like to just, for the next half hour, sit in the role of being your manager and show you guys what it might look like to help someone solve a problem without doing it yourself, right? Without jumping in. I don't know. Well, I know a few of you, but I don't know the majority of you. I don't know what your exact issues are. So I would just come at it with like clean slate, right? You know a little bit about me, you know what some of my values are. And I'd love to just lead you through some issues you might be facing as a manager. So I'm going to go back to the chat. And what I'd love is if you could, I'm going to go back to the group view. And if you could just where is it? Like raise your hand. Is there like a virtual hand raise here? Yes. So you can raise your hand, which is in the reaction tab at the bottom, and talk me through an issue that you might be facing, if you have one. Don't be shy. I'm going to welcome some new people who are just joining at the 30-minute mark. So what we're doing, everyone, is we are doing some coaching. So basically, I want to act as your stand-in manager and answer any questions that you might have related to being a manager, being a leader. So Michelle, you have raised your hand, and now I need to unmute you. There we go. Hi, Michelle.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you for the session. So I'm going to talk a little bit more general. I can get specific if you like. I have a group, a staff, who they basically don't trust each other. So they're constantly coming to the manager to say something about something that happened to someone else. So I can think of so many examples, but one where we have two girls at the front, and girl number one comes to tell the manager, hey manager, girl number two spoke to me poorly. I feel like she talks down to me. I don't like how she's talking. Okay, another example. Girl number one comes and says, girl number two insulted me. She drew some picture and insulted me. It's hanging up on in the back room. I think this picture is insulting. I don't like it, and whatnot. So as manager, it's dealing with like all of these, putting out mini fires, and the goal of what we're trying to do with the team is getting them to work as a team and approach each other. So with your background, you're talking about coaching. I'm very curious. I feel both situations are parallel, right?
Yeah.
Person number one, person number two, not happy with each other. Rather than talking to each other, they're expected to come to the manager to solve the problem.
Yes. I love this question. And I actually answered this question earlier today, which is so ironic. It's funny.
I kind of heard it, but it wasn't super clear.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. No, I think this is great. So I see those two issues as the same. And I think you're saying they're kind of parallel issues.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I would look at is also this idea of don't believe the story. So this is a coaching technique where people have ideas about things, and sometimes those ideas are based on not even what's happening in the moment, right? Sometimes they're reacting because something happened to them in the past and it's a trigger, and then there's this whole background that we don't know about. And we don't need to go there, but it might, like whatever's happening in the moment, we know just as humans, it might not have anything to do with what's going on, right? And this is this idea of empathy. But we don't want to like immediately just believe everything that's happening, or believe their version of the story, or believe really anything that's going on as a fact, because so much of it might be a story that they're building on. So what I would do is just listen to the whole story, and then start to pull out things that you're like, okay, that sounds like something we can work on, right? Like, let's work towards some solutions. So this is a problem, but what we want to do is get to a solution. So they might tell this story like, she put up this picture, I'm offended by this picture. And if the picture is there, it's a fact, right? Like we know there's a picture. But if someone's telling a story like, oh, they said this and they said this, and I don't like this and I don't like that, they're putting their own spin on it for sure. So listen and be empathetic, and then pull out some of the things you're hearing as like potential solutions. Like, okay, it sounds like maybe it's not going to be helpful for you guys to sit next to each other, or, you start to work through it individually with these people. And then eventually what you do is you get them in the same room. And this is where you build towards that, like, we're all working towards a common goal. Like it sounds like you're trying to do some of this already, but identify what those goals are as a team. Like as a team, our goals are XYZ, and those goals align to the company goals. How do they align to those goals? And work that through as a team. Like, what do we stand for as a team? And what do we stand for as individuals? Like, what's important to you? To the first woman, what's important to you? How you're being treated is important, and how you treat people is important. So what's like the guiding value? What's the guiding principle there? We all treat each other well. We all treat each other equally. Great. Okay, so how can you be a good example of that? Okay, now let's bring it to the team. We know this is a value now. One of us has this value that we treat each other well. How can we all be examples of that? Like, what are some of the ways that we can build on that and do it as a team? So it doesn't single anybody out, but it also gives them this hopefully empowered feeling like you've identified this really crucial value that we all believe in as a team, and we want to push that value forward. So it's no longer about these individual incidents. It's more about, okay, we're going to move above that and stand together towards a common goal and find those aligned values, because surely those two people in situation one and in situation two, there is an aligned value somewhere. We just have to find it. And it's your goal to kind of listen to those stories and see, just kind of be listening for, it sounds like what's important to you here is X. Okay, let's bring that to the team. I think if you get too much involved in the story of each event and you bring the people together and you try to resolve the story, it doesn't ever really resolve those issues, because people can't rise above them, right? We want to get them like a step above those day-to-day issues. And if you spend too much time focused on them and like getting the two people together and then trying to resolve things, then we perpetuate the issue a little bit, instead of us standing above it going, okay, yes, I recognize that this, was out of alignment with your values, basically, and we as a team stand for this. So how are we going to do that? Like, we need to do it as a team. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I've been hearing a lot about values recently, so I understand just how important they are and bringing that forward to the group. So that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So is there anyone else? I love that question, Michelle. Anyone else that has an issue that was such a good one to talk through? Because, management is not all everything we think it's going to be on a day-to-day basis, right? We get these things thrown at us from left field that we're not always expecting. And we want to, again, like go into each one of these issues from these three things, right? From our integrity, aligning to our values, being transparent, right? Like, there's a reason why we're working towards something bigger here. We're going to be transparent about the why. And also being empathetic, like listening to someone's situation, but maybe not getting super into the weeds of it, but being really open and curious and asking questions, and then trying to help foster a solution from there. Any other leadership management things that people are working through? And I can always bring so many examples. So I'll talk through one, and I'm going to look for hand raises, but I'll talk through one issue that has come up with a client of mine recently. So essentially, there's a person on their team that they feel is underperforming, and no one else on the team thinks that, but the manager has done projects with this person and feels like they're just not meeting the mark. And they have an expectation that this person is going to do a certain thing. And in reality, that certain thing is not in this person's job description. And this happens all the time. So the manager has this expectation, well, we hired this person. I thought we hired them to do X. Well, the person obviously thinks that they were hired to do what was in the job description. So there's a very normal issue in many organizations in regards to roles and responsibilities. And so what I have helped this manager understand about their person, so let's call her Jane. So Jane has a certain idea of what her job is, and her manager has a different idea about what that job is. But what's ironic is that the manager has never talked to her directly about her expectations. Jane just keeps missing the mark, right? She just keeps missing the expectations. So what's not happening is transparency. There's no clear communication or feedback happening around this role, right? And what is missing the mark? What does that mean? So what is going to happen if this issue does not get addressed is that this woman is going to show up, Jane's going to show up for her annual review, and she's going to get all this feedback from her manager that says she didn't miss the mark, or that she missed the mark, that she wasn't meeting expectations. And she's going to be confused because she's been doing the job over here in the job description, thinking she's nailing it, and no one's giving her any feedback. So what needs to happen here is a reset on expectations, a reset on roles and responsibilities. And because I am working and coaching the manager, what we've also realized is that there's a gap. There's actually a gap in roles. We're missing a role, which is what she's feeling when Jane is not meeting the expectation. So it's not Jane's fault. Let's just put that out there. It's not, Jane is doing her job. And the manager potentially didn't read the job description, or just hasn't aligned her expectations. So even if sometimes the role requires work outside of the job description, it's okay as long as the manager has really clearly set those expectations, right? And made sure there's room for you to do this additional work, because that's why people get burned out. They get lots of extra work on their plates, and then they're not sure how they're going to do it, right? But they do it to people please, and then they get burned out. So basically what needs to happen is a conversation with the manager and Jane to say, this was your job description. We have a gap over here. We need to get these tasks done. Do you feel like that falls outside of your skill set? If so, we need to go looking for somebody to fill that role, or should we work together to kind of reconfigure what your role is so that we can fill that gap? But what we don't want to do is just keep going forward and keep having this person missing the mark and having the manager do the work. So basically what's happening is the manager is doing that missing gap job, thinking that this other person should do it. So it's creating so much strife and stress, and also backtalk, because the manager is like, she's not meeting expectations. She's telling everyone, like she's telling the entire leadership team that this woman is not the right fit for the role, when really she is the exact right fit for the role she was hired for. But the manager is expecting this additional piece. So if you ever feel that as a manager that your person is missing the mark, remember, go into the conversation with empathy. Don't judge immediately as if they really are failing. This is that don't believe the story. I don't believe my client when she says the person is missing the mark, because if I believed her, I wouldn't be able to help her solve the problem. Does that make sense? I know it sounds weird that I'm saying don't believe people, but people bring a lot of background that maybe isn't always appropriate to the exact situation. So you want to keep them just tied to the facts. Like, is she really missing the mark? If we look at the job description, right? Like, let's pull the facts out, because the manager has a lot of stories about this woman and her background and if she's the right person. So we want to just focus on the facts. If you're a manager, just kind of look at the facts of the situation. Is she really missing the mark? Or is there this piece that's missing, and it might require a new solution? So make sure that you sit down with the person to talk through the why. Like, I feel like you're maybe missing these tasks, but let's go back and look at the job description. Are you? And then is there a way that we can maybe reconfigure the tasks on your plate to meet this need? Because I'm ending up doing that work. Maybe there's another way we can configure this, or maybe I need to go back and see if we can get another person on board. But this is a co-creation. Remember, you're not just deciding that they're a failure, deciding they're bad at their job. you want to sit down and talk with them, work through it, and then also work to co-create a solution with them. So expectation setting is a continual process with your team. You always want to be resetting expectations, because if they're not meeting the mark, I always just look at myself as a manager. Like, did I set clear expectations? Did I communicate clearly? Did I give them feedback when it was the right feedback time? And did they move on the feedback? And then did I look at their work again? And then did I trust them to go forward? Because I went through that whole cycle, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting really clear expectations with people. So amazing. So with the last few minutes here, I just want to talk to you all about a course that I'm running. It's a 5-week leadership training course, and it starts in 2 weeks. It starts on May 27th. And for all of you here who are potentially interested, I'm just going to give you my email, and then you can just send me an email and ask me any questions that you might have about the program. And it's also on my website, which is practica.consulting. I'm going to put that in the chat. But this is a way, what I really love to do in these group programs is create a really solid community. So sometimes when you're a manager or a leader, you just don't have a good sounding board. And you might not be able to talk to many people because you might not want to talk to your managers, depending on your relationship with them, and you're not going to talk to your staff. So what I like about these cohorts and these group courses that I run is that these people really become confidants with one another, and they work together to solve problems. So you'll be in a Slack group with this cohort, so you can be asking people questions. We'll have weekly group calls, and then you'll have weekly calls with a peer. And basically what you want to do is just work through some of these issues and use some of the tools and techniques that I'll teach you in the course. You can practice with your peer group. So it's not really role playing as much as it is just listening to some of the issues they might be facing and then helping them sort through it as if they're a staff member. So it's I've seen it be a really effective way for people to just become more confident and more grounded in their own style and their own authentic leadership, but also having this amazing sounding board. So when these issues come up, like Michelle is facing with these kind of day-to-day issues that feel so heavy in the moment, we can help put those issues into perspective and kind of help you work through them so you're not alone in those things. So it's a really fantastic program where I feel like people are building confidence and really helping grow and inspire their teams in a way that feels really natural to them, that doesn't feel like the leaders that they might be seeing that don't necessarily align with who they are or how they want to show up as a manager. So that is it. And I'm going to put my email here also. So if you're interested, you can email me to learn more about the program. And also often companies support this. It's a professional development cost. So I can write a proposal or invoice companies directly if that's something that your company is open to sponsoring. So if you guys have any questions, you can raise your hand again. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the topics we talked about today, about integrity and transparency and empathy, or if you have any other questions about the program. Louise. Yes. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. You're clapping.
No, yeah, hi, Jamie.
Hi.
It's nice to see you. No,
Hi.
I was trying to raise my hand and to clap at the same time. Yeah, it was great to learn about those ideas and learn more about leadership style. I was wondering if you have any readings that you can give us. I mean, to start somewhere. I mean, books or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I mean, what I'll do after the session is I'll send out the link, the recording,
Okay.
and then I'll send out some links to potential. I love that idea, like potential books. I also have a couple of podcasts that I've recorded recently
Okay.
related to leadership. But I'll send you some resources. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great
Yeah,
resources.
I think I still need to, I don't have really a lot of experience at all. I've worked with teams, but not really as a manager of a team. So I feel I don't really have experience at all. And I need to start somewhere, especially creating a vision or a roadmap for the team. And I need to, I can, figure it out, but I just also want to have some, something to start with.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's a lot of great information and resources out there for sure. And then obviously like I'm a resource. So
Okay. Yeah.
especially reach out to me because
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
love to help. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah. Thank
Louise.
you.
Yeah. See you soon. And then I'm gonna say, I think there's one more hand up. Michael, was your hand up?
Yes, how you doing? How you doing, Jamie?
Good. How are you?
Great, great. Thanks for the session. It's been great. And I was thinking about Michelle as she was talking about her team. And what I was going to ask about is what about team building concepts to develop, to get teams to believe in each other, to work together, and not to have those little bickering sessions between themselves. Because it's all about, at the end of the day, want to work together, go home stress free,
Yes.
because we all have lives. So anything
Yeah.
in regards to team building.
Yeah, I love that. I love that question. I would say one of the things that isn't hugely effective is like the forced team building. So I think sometimes their culture has deteriorated enough that they feel like they need to go outside and do external team building events to bring people together. And I really firmly believe that it's the way people work, right? It's like when you're working on a project and everyone's rallied around it and you figured out your kind of flow and the way that you work together, just like any good team, right? Like a sports team, when you figure out that flow as a sports team and you've like got your pace together, that's when you really feel connected to the team because it's that idea of like being behind a common goal and like having a common purpose. So if there's like a work project that you can bring them together on, and even if it's like slightly off the normal type of work things that you do, like without, taking up too much of people's time, but if you can get people aligned together working on a project, like maybe people who don't work together normally, like pulling people even from different parts of the organization to get to know each other more. But I really firmly believe it's like inside the work itself where people start to bond and connect and like have each other's backs less than these external like parties or team building events. I mean, I have seen some team building events that are more related to people having to like get out of a bind or, solve a problem together. But I really think it's like in the work itself and finding opportunities for people to come to solutions together, especially if certain people are having personality conflicts, putting them together to solve a work problem so that they feel like they're together on it instead of like you're over there siloed and I'm over here and I don't like you. It's more like, hey, I've got your back because we're working on this thing together. Does that make sense, Michael? Yeah, I think sometimes too at the external team building events, like it starts to suck into people's time also, like their personal time and their family time. And not everybody is able to do that.
Right. That's true. That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Like I said, I have a team too, and we doing constant team building exercises. And I was thinking about Michelle and her team and what she was going through. So
Yeah. It's great. No, it's so important. And is there something like, is there a work project that you could potentially get people trying to find solutions together on? Is there anything that you could think of that could be interesting for them to work on together?
Not specifically. I know right now my team and we're working on our file room because we're changing the concept of our whole file room. So that's a weekly project that we're working on every Thursday. So we shut down the office and we just, hone in on what we're going to do as far as sending out the files to be stored and put in storage, getting up a new filing system. So that's a project that we're working on together, which is it's fun because then we have lunch together, so the whole day is just we're working together to get that project done.
Amazing. And so that's a perfect example. That is like the perfect example. And do you feel like people are motivated and they're and like working together? Do you see some team building happening in that project?
Oh yeah, yes. Because again, the things that's got to be done. Some of them are tedious, but still, it's got to be done. And this is the day that we're doing this. So everybody, we come dressed, dress down day. You don't have to wear, be business casual. I bring breakfast in on Thursday mornings, and I order lunch also. So I feel it's working and it has gotten better over the last couple of months.
Amazing. That is literally like the perfect example. So I think the other thing to do is to give them credit. So if there's like a public place where you can acknowledge the work that they've been doing on this project as a team, it's another way to sort of build this camaraderie, like, oh yeah, we're on the winning team. Like we're doing this together. Like we're getting acknowledgement for the work that we're doing. I think that's another way to like bind that group together. Like, yes, we're working hard on this. We're doing this every week and it matters, right? Like that's the kind of getting them behind the purpose. Like there's a reason why we're doing this. It's benefiting other people. We're organizing things and giving them like acknowledgement for that so that they feel like, oh yeah, is anybody else working on this cool project where we get breakfast and lunch brought in and we get to dress down? Like it kind of gives them this like, they're special, right? They get to work on this special project.
It's all about ownership.
Yeah. Yes, it's theirs. Exactly. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I love that. You're doing everything right, Michael. I can imagine you're a phenomenal leader. So that's great. Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Really great. Yeah, team building is big, but like I said, I think it's more effective when you can do it the way that Michael's doing it. It's so much more effective when it's really related to work because these are your colleagues. And when you get behind a project, that's when you're like, oh yeah, we're going to get to the finish line. We're going to do this together. And it matters. It matters to the organization. Well, everybody has been so great. Thank you for all your comments and questions. I really appreciate everybody being here. I hope it was helpful. I'm so passionate about this topic because I just think not enough people have the help and support that they need as leaders, and leaders are critical to the organization, right? Like a really strong manager is what makes people want to stay at an organization. So I hope you all are those leaders and can stay those leaders. You're here, so that's already a big indication that you're doing the right thing and you're on the right track. So I hope you'll reach out and stay in touch and enjoy the rest of your day/evening, wherever you are. Take care, everybody. And I'll send out the recording, like I said, and I'll send out some links to some potential reference materials. All right, take care, everybody.